witchcraft is most prevalent in the church. We have been talking about wisdom over the last couple of weeks, and we started out saying that wisdom was defined by Jesus as hearing his word and doing it. And when you operate in life by doing multiple other things and trying to live by your own intelligence and live by your own good ideas, and you try and work hard and you try and make an effort and you try and base your life on something outside of the Word of God and what He has directed you either through the Scripture or through a personal word to you, you are not being wise. You are operating by man's wisdom. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, it defines these two different types of wisdom, man's wisdom and the wisdom of God, and says that God's wisdom is a hidden wisdom. And I love the reference in Luke chapter 6 where it says, let me tell you what a wise man is like, is someone who heard my words and did them. And then he tried to build his house on the rock, but he had to dig down. He had to find something that was hidden. It wasn't easy. It wasn't immediately obvious. And so often in humanity, we try and do things that are cheap. We try and do things that are convenient. We try and do things that are expedient. And because of that, the Bible says we're not operating by the wisdom of God, we're operating by the wisdom of man. And whenever you operate by the wisdom of man, you're going to get results that are in line with what man can do, not in line with what God can do. And then a couple of weeks ago, we talked about that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, Proverbs 1 verse 7. And we said that you need to come into alignment and you need to come into a knowledge of how powerful God is. If you just try and treat God as He's cute and nice and He's lovely and He wants to be really polite to you, and not as a powerful being that created the whole earth, then what happens is you dilute His power and your faith has nowhere to rest. Because 1 Corinthians 2 says Paul didn't come with wise and eloquent words, but he came with a demonstration of the Spirit's power so that your faith would not rest in man's wisdom, but on the power of God. And so when you're being wise, your faith rests in the power of God, His ability to accomplish, His ability to do what He promised, to help you to enter into the promise. And then Romans 4 says that when you operate by faith, that it may be by grace and guaranteed. So faith, operating by faith, guarantees the promise. When you operate outside of faith, the promise is not guaranteed. In fact, it's the opposite. It's guaranteed that you won't be able to enter. And so you got to operate by this faith. So today I want to open with a point, because many people will get religious about what I'm saying. They'll get religious about operating by faith and what God says. And so in the morning they may wake up and say, okay, God, what am I going to wear today? How do I live my life? Should I wear the red dress or the blue dress? Should I eat McDonald's or should I go to Burger King? And so they get so paralyzed by just trying to operate by what God says that they don't actually see what the obedience of faith is. Romans 1 verse 5 and the end of Romans talks about an obedience of faith. And so I want to elaborate a little on that just to show people that this is not about religion. This is not about a rule set. This is not about a to-do list that you have to check off. It's not about God directing every single decision that you make in life so that you can't make any decision until you pray 3 hours till you hear the Holy Spirit say, wear the red dress. It's none of that. It's actually about the obedience of faith. And when you operate in the obedience of faith, you're not operating by a religious rule set whereby I haven't tied my cumin this month. That's what Jesus said. I've got to tie my cumin. So you don't even have cumin. So you've got to go and buy the spiced cumin so you can tithe. I've got to be nice to the beggar. So I give him all my money. So then I end up as a beggar because I'm giving him all my money. Or don't look at a woman with lust. Oh no. Oh, this morning there was a beautiful lady on the bus and I might have just glimpsed at her with a bit of lust in my heart. Oh no. Okay. Pluck up my eye. And so there's a whole pile of people walking around blind. They're walking around without arms. And they're walking around poor. They're walking around broken. They're walking around paralyzed. Because they're so trying to be obedient, but they don't understand what the obedience is. And so the obedience of faith is when you enter into a promise that you don't attempt to receive it by your own works, you actually receive it by relying on God being able to produce it on your behalf. And so God created faith. He authored faith. Romans 12 says, He made faith exist. You don't create faith. He makes faith exist. And then out of that place, you then respond to the authoring and the completion or the perfecting of faith. And everything in between, Him starting and finishing faith, is sustained by Him. All you're doing is responding in obedience to faith. Now, faith is not just a belief in anything. I can have a trust that when I sit down in this chair, that it will hold my weight. That's a lot of faith. Been eating a lot. I can have a faith, but the faith in the Bible is not talking about trusting any old thing. It's talking about believing in God's ability to provide a solution to you entering into the promise. It's talking about the gospel. It's talking about the cross. And so religion is man's attempt to reach God. It's man's rule set that if you can do enough good things and you can avoid enough bad things, and if I can fulfill my religious to-do list, then I might just be holy enough to have relationship with God. And that's not faith. In fact, Hebrews 4 calls that an evil heart of unbelief. Evil, notice that word. It's not benign. It's not innocent. It's not accidental. When you don't operate in the obedience of faith, the Bible says you're operating in an evil heart of unbelief. But when you operate by faith, the obedience of faith, what you're doing is you're coming into an acknowledgement and an agreement and a response in faith that Jesus did it on your behalf. And actually it brings freedom, it brings peace, it brings tranquility. Even though storms may be coming, you're able to be found asleep in the boat with Jesus. Not because you produced a result, but because you know He's producing a result on your behalf. When you come into grace, when you come into knowing that there's a righteousness apart from the law, apart from your dead works, apart from what you're able to produce, it produces rest and peace and a flow of anointing in your life that is unbeatable by the best effort you can bring. And so I really want to clarify that, and many better people than me can clarify that better than me, but I really want people to see the obedience of faith is not a robotic response. It's a faith-filled response to what Jesus has already done. The to-do list is check, 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 check by Him, not by you. And when you live in that freedom, you may just do some good things, and there may be some good results. But more importantly, you understand that those results are done by Him, and it's empowered by Him, not yourself. It's a horrible thing to come into a position where you think you're propping everything up. It sounds romantic. It sounds, it's strong, and I can be a hero, and I can make sure I can get there, and I can produce the result. But if you ever end up in those sort of situations, you end up resenting the very blessing that situation was supposed to bring you, because you realize you can't prop it up. You realize eventually you're going to make a mistake. You're going to slip up. Eventually you're going to make a wrong decision, even though your intention may be good. And the whole thing, if it's on your shoulders, will come crumbling down. This is why people don't pick up leadership responsibility. They have a little taste and they go, oh, I don't want to touch that. Because if you think about leadership as something that you have to carry and not you're partnering with God who's carrying it, then it will be a crushing load. That's why the world just wants to avoid responsibility and then blame others for making wrong decisions, because it's so much easier. But when you come into an acknowledgement of what Jesus did on your behalf, you're able to step into responsibilities. You're able to climb mountains. You're able to do amazing things without the weight of responsibility on your shoulders, because you can see He is powerful. You are in the fear of the Lord. You can see He can just crush things when He wants to, and He has the power to do anything He wants. When you come into that acknowledgement, and then you understand that His good nature is aimed towards you, you can step into promises. You can step into arenas. You can step into places that maybe you feel uncomfortable or uncertain, but you know, partnering with Him, you can produce the promise. So the obedience of faith is very, very integral to a Christian's life. If you are not being obedient, if you don't have the obedience of faith, you're probably not a Christian, and then you need to get saved. But once you become saved, you are being obedient. You're living in faith because you're saying, God, I trust you. I believe that you died on the cross for me. I don't have to produce this result. Okay, so impossible to please God without faith. Hebrews 11 verse 6. Impossible to please God without faith. Unless you're being obedient in faith, you're being disobedient, and you need a smack on your bum. You need to come into alignment with obedience. And that's what Jesus did on the cross for us. He made that way possible. Okay, last week we looked at Saul. We said Saul was trying to get back into favor. He was trying to enter into a promise of what the kingship was, which was leading Israel, and it was defeating the enemies and bringing fruitfulness and a blessed atmosphere over Israel. And that was his intention. That was his heart. He really was fighting for Israel. He was fighting their battles. But at a personal level, he had deep insecurity. He was very worried about what other people were thinking. He wasn't in the fear of the Lord. He was hugely under the fear of man. If you read up in his inauguration, if you read up about the first major battles he had, and if you read up again on the scriptures we read last week in 1 Samuel 15, you'll see he was so concerned that when men started to scatter, he started to make sacrifices. When people started to say sort of things, he reacted in weird ways. And so when God says to him, I want you to go and fight the Amalekites, like we discussed last week, and I want you to destroy absolutely everything, because of his concern with the things of man, because he considered how they perceive things. More, it's not that you can't consider how people think, and you can't be sensitive, and you can't be aware of how people react. That's not bad. But because he valued that more than he did what God thought and what God had said, what he did is he kept back the king that he was supposed to kill. He kept him back, and he kept back the best of the sheep that he was supposed to completely destroy. And he actually blamed his men for doing that. And his intention was he was going to go to Gilgal, back to the place of favor, in order to make a sacrifice to get back into God's good graces. But it's strange, because before he went to Gilgal, this shows you his heart, this shows you where he's really at. Before he went there, he went past a place called Carmel. Carmel was the up-and-coming place. The Bible says it was full of splendor. And there was an up-and-coming people group that were congregating around Carmel. There was big businessmen. David encountered one of those businessmen in Carmel. This was the place to be seen. This was the fancy place. This was downtown with all the cool restaurants. This is where all the trendy people with the fancy clothes and the fancy glasses and hairstyles, this is where they all hung out, the rich people. And so instead of going straight to favor, which you could forgive Saul for wanting to get back into God's good graces, instead of going straight there, he shows his heart and he makes a detour to Carmel. And in the middle of Carmel, he builds a monument to himself because of the great battle that he's just won. Now, the funny thing is, God said, I want you to absolutely destroy that enemy. I want nothing of them to exist. If you go and look through the history books, you won't find much about the Amalekites. It's like they've been wiped clean from history. That's what God's intention, because they were so violently against Israel when they were in their infant state of coming out of slavery that God smashed them for touching his firstborn. He's not going to play around with the church. If people try and touch the church, they're going to get sorted out. If the church is operating in grace and in favor, if there's an apostate church, a fake church, a church that looks like the church on the outside, it's going to be trouble for the church. But if the church is genuinely after God, if they're genuinely operating in the obedience of faith, you got to know God's power is aimed towards protecting and promoting that church. And so, while Saul was building a monument to the Amalekites to show how he had won the battle, he was doing the very opposite of what God commanded him to do, which was destroy them, annihilate them, wipe them out. I don't want them ever mentioned again. And now he's building a monument to say, hey, everyone, look at what Saul did to the Amalekites. And so Saul joined his name with someone or some nation that was supposed to be annihilated. And you know what happened with Saul. He ended up killing himself. His reign ended up being annihilated. Sometimes people put more value on what they're fighting than who they're fighting with. And when you're fighting with the Lord, you attach yourself. You start to respond in faith to him, and now you end up an upward trend. You end up in a market that's always making money, so to speak. But when you identify yourself with your enemy, and your enemy has judgment pronounced on it, you're going to be in trouble, because you're going to go down with that trend. I've seen some Christians who try and attack the devil. They try and attack an issue. They try and become a social justice warrior. They try and fight with good intentions, I'm sure, but they try and fight something bad, and they end up worse than the thing they're fighting. Saul's life and his reign was ended before the Amalekites ended. Be very careful the battles that you fight. In the New Covenant, there's a battle we're supposed to fight. It's called the fight of faith. When you define yourself by all these other battles, you're going to be in trouble. Don't define yourself with a battle against poverty. Don't make your life's existence about rising out of just being able to survive and now you've made it. Self-made men are very, very dangerous people to be around. The love of money is the root of all evil. When you define yourself about just making money, you are in trouble. It's not bad to make money. I want to make a lot of money. Hey, I like money. But don't end up making money the battle that you fight in life. You've got to define yourself by who you're fighting with, not who you're fighting against. And so Saul builds this monument in Carmel. Now, about 165 years later, there's another man who turns up at Mount Carmel. And that's what I want to focus on today. Remember, we're talking about wisdom. We're talking about the obedience of faith. We're talking about hearing and doing what God says and not anything else. We're not trying to obey our own agenda. We're not trying to dictate to God how he should do things, when he should do things, why he should do things. No, we respond. Faith is a response to what he says. When he says wait, there's only one thing you can do. If you try and do anything else, you're not being obedient. And in 1 Samuel 15:22, this is the final blow for Saul. Other things played out in terms of what happened with men around him, or what happened with David, and what happened with Samuel. But in terms of God's relationship with Saul, this is the final closing words to Saul. And God says, to obey is better than sacrifice. God, I'm trying to bring you a sacrifice. I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to fight this battle. Can't you see that these people are evil and I'm going to fight the evil? I'm going to make the sacrifice. And God says to obey is better than sacrifice. To heed better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. When you rebel against God's word, you are now operating in witchcraft. Now, for many people, that's a scary word. And we're going to talk about that today, why it's not a scary word and why it's easy to avoid that in your life. But when you don't do what God says, when you're not operating in wisdom, you are operating in witchcraft. And don't think that witchcraft is just some old covenant thing that happened long ago and it doesn't exist today. It happens all the time. It's most prevalent in the church. And you'll see why, when I define it, you'll see why I can say that witchcraft is most prevalent in the church. If God's not speaking to you and you do bad things, it's not necessarily witchcraft. It's not witchcraft. But when God speaks to you and you do something else, even if it's a good thing, but it's other than what he said, that is witchcraft. We can't just talk about lovey-dovey, grace, 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 God's good, God's good, God's good, and then not look sometimes at the consequences of not the obedience of faith. You know, the car has 5 gears that go forward and 1 gear that goes backwards. Sometimes you've got to use the reverse gear to understand and maneuver and get out of trouble in your car. The same thing in the spiritual. For the vast majority of time, we should be talking about God's good nature and how much he loves us and how to live in freedom and peace and joy and all these beautiful things. But every now and again, we need to use a reverse gear to look at the consequences of not living in the positive benefits that God offers. You've got to sometimes have a little hiding, a readjustment, a reverse gear to see, oh, I don't want to do that. And then just quickly, easily repent and say, oh God, I'm not going to touch that. It sets you up for a positive, faith-filled life when you understand that there are consequences of not living in the obedience of faith. So Samuel said to Saul, this was the voice of God through Samuel, rebellion is as witchcraft. So 165 years later, Elijah, the great prophet. Everyone thinks Elijah's the greatest prophet in the Old Covenant. No, he's not. Even his immediate successor was twice as successful as him. He had a double portion. If you count the miracles, he had twice the number of miracles. Even when he was dead, he was raising to life other dead people. Go and read it. You'll see. They throw a dead body into his grave, an open grave, and that person comes back to life, pops out. Can you imagine trying to bury that person and then you see, oh, he's just jumped out of the grave, he's run out. Must have been a very scary thing. Elijah's not the greatest prophet, but he is the greatest example of the old covenant prophetic, and we're going to look at that now. So Elijah says in 1 Kings 17, we're not going to read all of this because there's way too much content. Bad things are happening in the land. There's a king called King Ahab. And this king is doing evil things. He's married a foreign woman, Jezebel. And Jezebel worships foreign gods. She worships Baal and Asherah. Excuse my pronunciation. And so she has a combination of about 850 prophets eating at her own table. She feeds them. From the king's taxes and the king's tithes that he gets, they are now feeding these evil prophets. They're serving other gods. And they're leading the whole of Israel astray from what God has said. That's very disobedient. That's very bad. And that is punishable by death according to the Old Covenant. It's not in God's nature he's a jealous God. And so when you start serving other things, he gets very angry. And so Elijah sees all of this going on. And in 1 Kings 17, he says, at my word, there will be no more rain on the land. Basically, he's giving Israel and Ahab and Jezebel an ultimatum to come into alignment with the kingdom or die. That's basically what he's doing. Now, what's interesting, he says, at my word. He didn't say it was God's word. And nowhere in the text does it clearly say that God had directed Elijah to do this. Now, it's open to interpretation. Maybe he did. The prophetic is like that. But it doesn't explicitly say God said to Elijah, call for a drought on the land. And so Elijah says, at my word, there will be no more rain, not a single drop of rain, until I give the say-so. And so Israel, for 3.5 years, goes through incredible economic downturn. Animals are dying. People are really struggling. Some people are dying. Some people are on the verge of death. There really is nothing left in Israel to sustain. And in Elijah's mind, he's thinking, let them all die. Let them all die because they're not obeying God. Have you ever met a religious person like that? Well, you deserve to get AIDS because you were sleeping around. I used to think that as a teenager. I thought if you got AIDS, you deserved it and you deserved to die. That was God's judgment on you. So arrogant. So stupid, so religious. So Elijah's in this battle with the king, and he's saying, you better come into alignment or you're going to die, and I don't mind how many other people die along with you. And then God says to Elijah, go and present yourself. This is very royal language. Go and present yourself to King Ahab. Now, when you present yourself to a king, you're humble. You bow. You give him credit. You give him honor because he's the king. And so when you present yourself, it's like giving someone a present. You're giving them honor. I want you to go and treat Ahab, this evil king, this bad king. He's doing bad things. I want you to go and present yourself to him. And so Elijah obeys. He goes along. And as soon as he encounters Ahab says to him, hey, you troubler of Israel, and provokes him and accuses him. And you know what? Elijah doesn't say, you know what? I'm here on God's mission. God's told me to come and present myself to you. God wants to bring rain on the land. Go and present yourself. I want to bring rain on the land. I want to answer this question of blessing. I don't want people to die. Actually, I want to save people. I love Israel. I want to bless them. And Elijah is keeping the rain off the cards. Eventually God says, go and present yourself. I'm going to bring rain. Ahab says, you troubler of Israel. And Elijah just flips his lid. He just goes crazy. How dare you call me the troubler? You're the one who's called trouble. You're the one who's feeding these bad prophets. You're the one who's leading Israel astray. And he just goes off on this rant about how bad Ahab is. And you know what? He was right. He was right in his rant. But it's not what God said. Elijah, the great prophet. Go and read it. So Elijah says, we're going to have a competition. You notice people who are religious often want to get their intellectual knowledge out of how much they know the Bible, or what spiritual experience they've been through, or how much they know, or how many angels they've seen. They always want to be competitive because they think that they can beat you competitively. That means more than what God has said. And yet truth, Proverbs said, can come out of the mouth of babes. A baby with no experience, with no knowledge of the Bible, doesn't even know how to read, can operate in more truth than someone who knows the Bible backwards. Don't be impressed when someone knows their Bible, or they can pray fancy prayers, or they've seen fancy miracles. Be impressed when someone's obedient, operates in the obedience of faith. So Elijah calls for the competition. We all know what happens. He says, you bring your prophets. I'm going to stand here alone, just myself. You build yourself an altar, and you call down fire from your gods. And let's see. We'll give you the whole day, and let's see if your gods can produce a miracle. Can you call down fire? And of course, the whole afternoon, he's provoking them. He's telling them, is your God asleep? Is he on the toilet? And he just insults them. And eventually, these guys are so desperate to try and produce a miracle that they start cutting themselves and doing weird things to try and produce a miracle. And of course, they can't. And so Elijah, he sets up his altar. And he puts the cow or the bull or whatever on top of the altar, and they douse it with jugs and jugs and jugs of water. Now remember, it's a drought. And now he's using people's precious drinking water to prove his case, to prove how powerful he is and what he can operate in. It's quite cruel, actually, when you think about it. God never said, go and prove how powerful you are, Elijah, and how you can call down fire. He said, I want to go and call down rain. So now Elijah's using their supplies in his competitive way. Remember, it's Mount Carmel. It's a monument to yourself. It's a monument to the battle that you won, even though God won it. And so they douse the thing with water. And we're all amazed by this. We're all like, wow. And he says, God, I'm calling on you. Are you not the Most High? I'm going to call on you, the God who answers by fire. And fire comes down from heaven and obliterates the ground around the sacrifice. It melts all the water. It licks up everything that was available. And of course, the sacrifice is consumed. Amazing miracle. Well done, Elijah. You're so powerful. It was disobedient. It wasn't what God had said. And so we applaud that. We applaud the miraculous sometimes. But it depends on how you get to the miraculous. There's people who can operate in signs and wonders and miracles, and you can taste, this is not right. There's something wrong here. And if you watch their lives, you'll see it's a slow descent. Sometimes it's a quick descent into less and less miraculous and more show and tell, more and more games, more and more trying to prop up. Because they didn't get into the miraculous by wisdom. Sometimes they get into the miraculous by witchcraft. And because God honored his own word and his prophet, his representative, and because he loved the people of Israel, he wouldn't allow a comparison to happen between the nation's gods and the living God. And so he answered by fire because people were watching. But that wasn't what he wanted to do. In some sense, it was like God was cornered to prove himself by Elijah. Now we'll go into that. So Elijah, on the momentum of what he's just won, he says, seize all the prophets. And so they seize these evil prophets and he starts to slaughter them, and there's blood flying everywhere and blood and guts and gore. And people are in fear. They're crying out, oh no, God, there's a living God. And he wins this great battle. And then he goes, after he does the big competition stuff and the big showy stuff and the fire from heaven stuff, then he goes and has to bow down 7 times in order for God's word to actually be enacted. He shouldn't have even had to pray once, because God said, I want to bring the rain. And he has to bow down 7 times. He has to tell a servant, hey, go and check. Is there rain? Is there rain or rain? Eventually, after 7 times, there's a cloud as small as a man's hand that shows up on the horizon. That's what it's like when you try and operate the kingdom out of rebellion. You may get a small little result. You may have to bow down 7 times. You'll get fire, but it'll be a diminishing return. And so after this long, fancy rain dance, Christians read that story and go, oh, it's so well done. Elijah, he was able to bring rain. Oh, wonderful. He didn't have to pray 7 times to call down fire. Why did he have to pray 7 times, bow down 7 times to get rain? It's because he was operating in rebellion, and there was already a diminishment in the miracles that were available. Let me go on and prove the case further. A little while later, he tells King Ahab, I can hear the sound of heavy rain. He says, go back to your home before you can't, because your chariot won't make it. Ahab goes home. He reports to Jezebel what had happened. Now, Jezebel's just lost these prophets. She's just suffered a major defeat. She should be reeling. She should be repentant. And she sends Elijah a little note, just a little note, and says, if by this time tomorrow I don't make you like one of these prophets, then I'm going to die. She made a threat on a little, probably handwritten note to say, Elijah, I'm coming after you. How dare you touch my prophets? And what's amazing to me, and this has perplexed me for about 8 years intensely. I've looked at this. I've read about it. I've tried to find the forums and the blogs. I haven't found. What I'm telling you today, I've never heard a human say before. This is just intense. God, give me revelation on this. I know there's something I'm missing. Why would this great prophet who could call fire down from heaven run in fear from a handwritten note from a defeated queen? She wasn't even the king. She didn't have the highest authority. He's just had a good interaction with the king. He's just defeated all these prophets. He's still got probably blood on his hands. He's got fire come down from heaven. And he's running from a little handwritten note. Elijah knew that her threat was the very same threat he made to Israel and to those bad prophets. He knew he was playing in the same field. He was playing the same game that she was playing. And so when she wrote that note, he realized, I'm operating in the same paradigm that she is. And he ran in fear. On the surface of things, he should have had such momentum behind him that he should have run into that palace and chopped her head off in front of everyone and not get in front of her very husband, because he could call down fire, right? He's the great prophet of God. He knew he was operating in disobedience. And so when someone else was operating in arrogance and disobedience and rebellion, it exposed how he was operating. He knew that he was on a downward decline of the miraculous. He knew he couldn't sustain that power. When he killed all those prophets and then had to pray 7 times, that must have plagued his mind. Why is it I could call down fire instantly, but I had to pray 7 times for rain. But God said, bring the rain. Oh no. And this, as he mulled over this, when he got that note, he had nothing left. He had hit rock bottom. And so he runs away and says, God, I'm no better than my forefathers. I wonder if he could see the monument before he ran away. I wonder if he could see the monument that Saul had built to himself. I wonder if that was in his mind. So he runs away. I'm no better than my forefathers. He says, take my life. Just take me from this world. Rob calls it the suicide prayer. And the angels had to come wake him up, feed him, and he fell back asleep. It says, I think he died. I think he did die. I've heard that. I've heard Rob say that. I've heard others say that. He just didn't want to do it anymore. He knew he couldn't win the game, even though he had just, on paper, had won these big battles. In 2 Kings chapter 9, there's another character. I love this man. He's a hero of mine. His name is Jehu. And Jehu didn't care about what it looked like. He didn't care about what people thought about him. When he was anointed king, he didn't even tell his friends. He's in the middle of a conversation. The prophet comes and says, you're king now. He's like, oh yeah, whatever. And goes back and carries on playing cards or whatever he's doing with his boys. And his boys say, hey, what did the prophet do? What's he say? No, nothing. Keeps on playing his cards. And the guy said, no, come on, tell us what the prophet said. And he says, oh yeah, he's just anointed me king. This is now the king of Israel. And he has no regard. It's said of Jehu that he wasn't all regal and royal, and he didn't play the nice religious game. He didn't wear the fancy clothes. He didn't comb his hair the right way. He didn't pronounce the Lord God in the fanciest way. It says when he rode his chariot, he rode like a madman. He was just zealous. He was passionate. He was crazy. They called him a maniac. It was so obvious from a long distance. You could see when he rode his chariot, he didn't ride like you were supposed to ride the chariot. He didn't play the political religious game. And so Jehu, he comes to deal with Jezebel. Now remember, Elijah ran away from a little note, and he should have had all the momentum on his side to win that battle. Jehu gets anointed to be king of Israel and is told, go and sort out Jezebel. So do you know what he does? He goes to sort out Jezebel. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that an amazing, wonderful conundrum to solve? Do this. He goes to go and do that. Isn't that phenomenal? It's beautiful. Be obedient to faith. Be obedient to faith. Isn't that wonderful? It's not complicated. You don't have to worry about what your family says or what your pastor says or what. Just be obedient to faith. It doesn't matter what your peers say. Stop worrying about that. You've got to get more of the fear of the Lord if you're in the fear of man. So Jehu's riding to Jezebel. He looks like a crazy man. They see him. Is that not Jehu? He rides like a madman. And people ride out to him to try and greet him to see, hey, what's your agenda here, Jehu? And as they ride out to him, they say, have you come in peace? And he says, what do you have to do with peace? And the riders fall in behind him as he's going on his mission. You got to understand, when you have an authority from God and you're operating in the authority of his word, even those who are coming to test, are you on side, are you off side, are you for us, are you against us, even those will come into alignment with the agenda and the mission that you're on. They will recognize the word of truth. And so this happens 2-3 times where people come into alignment. Eventually, the king's son comes out and he kills him. He just kills him. God said, I want you to kill him. So he kills him and he keeps on riding and eventually ends up at the tower that Jezebel has hidden herself in. She's painted her eyes. She's made herself look pretty. Remember, an external game. She's trying to look the part. She's trying to look regal. And she's painted her eyes all beautiful. And he waltzes up to that tower. And she says to him, oh, Zimri, you murderer of your master. Have you come to murder your master? Now, when I first read that the first 5 times, 6 times, I didn't notice this Zimri comment. Zimri. What's Zimri got to do with it? Is that a Hebrew word that I don't know about? And so after I reread these stories over and over again, because I'm going, God, give me revelation. I know you've hidden this, and I'm on an exploration journey where I want to see what your word says. And so I've read this many, many times. I've gone over these many times. Eventually, maybe the 15th, 20th time, I start to look up what the Zimri insult is, what the Zimri comment is. And I realize that earlier in in the lineage of the Israel kings that there was another king who was a bad guy, the house of Baasha, Elah, the house of Baasha. And God had raised up a man within his ranks to kill him. And so an officer in his army murdered this Elah of the house of Baasha, and his name was Zimri. And so Zimri became known as a usurper. And 7 days later, this usurper actually killed himself. And so Zimri was an insult. If you called someone Zimri in the context of kings, it means you were trying to be dishonorable, you're trying to kill, you're trying to murder, you're trying to usurp your master. And so look at this. This is amazing. Jehu is riding up to the tower, and he gets insulted with a comment that is absolutely accurate. God has called Jehu to come and sort out the king, to murder him, to kill him. And he's insulted with the perfect accusation. Do you know what Jehu does? Crumbles and falls. Oh no, you're right. Oh, it does look like I'm usurping. Oh no, I can't look like Zimri. Everyone hates Zimri. Oh no. He looks up and just faces Jezebel in person. Now contrast that with Elijah, with a little handwritten note that was sent to him, with all the momentum on his side. He couldn't be accused of not being zealous for God or not trying to do the right thing or fight the right battle. He runs in fear because below the surface he knew he was in rebellion. But on the surface of things, Jehu, he was anointed king in secret. There was still another king at play. He was now usurping his master. He had just killed the master's son. He's now coming to kill the queen of Israel. On the surface of it, he should have been running for the hills. He should have been so scared. And yet, when you look just a little bit deeper, he was being obedient to what God had said. Now, here's the punchline of all of that. We say that witchcraft is a force that comes against us. We say that the demonic operates in witchcraft to try and pressure us, control us, play games with us, manipulate us, push us around, and that is a hard battle to fight. And we misunderstand this key concept. Witchcraft is not an external force that comes against you. Witchcraft is an internal force. It is a heart issue that allows you to be pushed around. Yes, sometimes by the demonic, but by your own choices. When you see someone operating in witchcraft, it's not that the demons are pulling the strings ooh, and making them operate. That is a Hollywood idea of witchcraft. Witchcraft so often is trying to get the promise, the right result, but in rebellion, not by what God had said. Witchcraft is internal, not external. Imagine a man in a hotel room, private hotel room. No one will ever know what goes on in that hotel room. It is completely private. His wife won't know, his kids won't know, nobody on the universe will know. And into that room comes a good-looking, handsome man. And that man is a prostitute and wants to have sex with him. Now, no one will know about this. Now, if that man sitting in that hotel room, that husband, is a heterosexual male, as God created him, doesn't matter how sexy that male prostitute comes in. It doesn't matter what lingerie he's wearing. It doesn't matter about his dance moves. There is no opportunity for that married man to commit adultery. There's not one iota of chance. He's not going to do it. If he's a heterosexual man, he's not sexually attracted to the male prostitute. It doesn't matter what the male prostitute is doing. It has zero effect. Now, I know that's ridiculous and funny, but think about it. We say witchcraft is this force and you're going to fight it. No, you don't have to fight it. I don't care how sexy a man is. I'm just not sexually attracted. It just won't happen. Now imagine that same husband. And now a sexy, beautiful looking female prostitute comes into the room. And she's wearing lingerie and she's dancing all sexy. And she's being suggestive. And no one else will ever know about it. Can you see the difference? Can you see there's a potential for attraction? Can you see that there's an opportunity now? It had nothing to do with the sexy lingerie dancing. It had to do whether that person had a possibility and an opening in their heart for that sexy dancing lingerie, all of that nonsense, to affect him. You don't even need a sexy girl. You just need a girl with an intention, and that could be an attraction. That's the same with witchcraft. Witchcraft will just bounce off you. It can't operate. Jehu, it just didn't matter. Even though the accusation was correct, it did not affect him in the slightest. He just went on his mission. Later on, he meets friends of that king that he was supposed to be destroying. He says, "Get on my chariot. Come follow me. Come watch my zeal for the Lord." He was so zealous and passionate for God's word and what God was doing that it didn't matter what it looked on the outside. It just didn't affect him. But Elijah was playing a very different game, and he could not accomplish the very mission he was so passionate about because the way he was trying to get there was through rebellion. It wasn't what God had said. Be very careful about rebellion. It is as witchcraft. Be very careful about the battles you're trying to fight and the way that you're trying to get there. So many people are trying to rush to a result, a good result. It could even be, and most often is, a promise of God. But the way they're trying to get there is manipulate and force and coerce God to make it happen. God does not answer to us. We answer to him. The fear of the Lord is so important in this thing. Not to make you fearful because you want to be afraid. Just see his raw power. When you see his raw power, you can rest in faith, and your faith can rest in his power to produce the result. If you don't see that, you will be tempted to operate by other means. Witchcraft. It's to make something by some other power. And so you will try and make it to the promise by your own effort. You'll try and make it to righteousness by doing enough good things. And that is not how God operates. He operates by the obedience of faith. Let me say again, witchcraft is not an external force that comes against you. It is an internal heart issue that if you're not operating in faith, you allow witchcraft to operate in you. Don't confuse the demonic and witchcraft. The demonic wants to come and steal, kill, and destroy. That's Satan's agenda. He wants to just kill everything he can, steal from you, and he wants to destroy everything around you. That's what he wants to do. That's easy to identify. That's obvious. If you see the guy with the red suit and the pointy ears and the trident walk into the room, hey, that's the devil. It's easy to recognize. It's much harder to recognize witchcraft, because witchcraft is what happened in Eden. It's when man rebelled against God and God's ways because he thought he knew better. Witchcraft can be hidden behind pulpits. It can be hidden around people with good intentions trying to do the right thing. It can be hidden in marriages. Bonnie and I want to share this. I don't know if it'll be appropriate on a Sunday morning or some other forum, but we want to share. We operated in witchcraft in our marriage, probably for the first 8 years. And we would look at other people and we go, we don't want a marriage like that. We don't want a marriage like that. And all the while, we were operating in witchcraft with our own marriage. Witchcraft can be hidden in business because you're trying to get to a result. You're trying to get to profit. Even if you want to use that profit for the kingdom and to help the poor, but you're trying to get there ahead of God's timing and God's agenda, that's witchcraft. Wisdom is hearing what God said and doing that, not doing all these other things. Now, the most important point I can make is when it comes to your righteousness and when it comes to living in a relationship with God, when you think you can do good things and avoid bad things, that is called witchcraft. If you think that earns you some brownie points and that when you get to heaven you'll sit three rows closer to Jesus, you are completely deceived. That's not how the kingdom operates. That's witchcraft. You've got to understand that he did it all for you, and then when you respond to that and rest in that, that is called wisdom. That is called the obedience of faith. Witchcraft is not something that's external, it's something internal. When you start to measure things by this paradigm, you'll see it's much more prevalent than you realize. You'll see it. You'll just see a marriage and go, oh, I can see witchcraft. Oh, I can see manipulation. I can see she wants this or he wants that. He's going to push. He's going to pout. She's going to sit down too heavy. She's going to drop her shoulders. Oh, witchcraft. Oh, that's what that is. You see kids throwing tantrums and they're not in pain and there's no issues. They just want the toy and so they throw a tantrum. Oh, that's manipulating. That is not a loving faith response to their parents. That is a dropping of their weight and a manipulating the whole family. Oh, that's witchcraft. Whose fault is that? The poor kid? No. It's not the kid's fault. It's daddy's fault. Daddy let that happen. It's not a wife's fault when she operates in witchcraft for the most part. It's the husband's fault. God gave authority to man. And when man allows his wife to pout and manipulate and use tears to try and move agendas and throw little tantrums and play little sexual games, and when I say that, I mean withdrawing, you got to know that is witchcraft, and it's not her fault. It's his fault. He let her get away with it. Women are phenomenal, amazing creatures, and they will amend and adapt and mold to the way that a husband leads. And if a husband leads well, he won't allow witchcraft in his home. I can say with integrity, most of us, if not all of us, have operated and still operate in witchcraft to a large degree. And the reason people won't like hearing that is because they think, ooh, demons, ooh, and they think that you've invited demons at your home and all that. That can happen, but most of the time it's just a little attitude thing. It's just make things hard. It's a little bit of sand in the machinery. It's when the boss says, hey, we're going in this direction, and then people go, oh, no, we're not going in that direction, and they use their weight to try and counteract the direction that the boss wants to go. It's witchcraft. It's just plain and simple witchcraft. You don't have to have demons in the room for witchcraft to be perpetrated. You just have to have a different motive in your heart. You can even have the right agenda, but get there a different way. Witchcraft. When a pastor tries to manipulate people to give, or to look holy, or do this thing, it's witchcraft. Pastors operate in witchcraft all the time. Don't think you don't do it. We all do it. What is so important is that we don't condemn ourselves and we beat ourselves up for when we recognize that in our lives, is that we come to a God of grace, we come to a throne of grace so we can find help in our time of need. Hebrews 4. That Hebrews 4 scripture comes just after talking about Israel's evil heart of unbelief. A heart of obedience in faith comes to a throne of grace. And it doesn't beat itself up. It doesn't try and condemn itself to get back into God's good books. It just says, God, I don't want to operate in that. It's a heavy weight. I don't want to carry this load of trying to manipulate the journey so that I can get the result that, even if you've promised it, I want to get that result by manipulation. You start out in the way that you mean to go on. If you start out with manipulation, you're going to end up with manipulation. If you start out with rebellion, you're going to end up with rebellion. If you start out with witchcraft, what do you think you're going to get? Far rather stay in God's timing, stay in His peace, learn to be content in all situations. It's not that you don't pray for promises. It's not that you don't push for things, but that you pray and push in His timing and in the way He said it. People trying to push for the promise by their own effort have a stench around them that you might not always identify what it is or why it's wrong or how it operates. But you can sense it. When I was 20, 22, a church, it's so funny how it happened. We were in a prayer meeting for the whole city of Dublin in Ireland. And so there's multiple different churches in the room. Hundreds of people, probably close to 1,000 people. And I looked up and I noticed there was, like, we're all sitting down now, someone's preaching, and whilst this is happening, about 10 or 15 people came in from the back and started to hand out pamphlets and try and talk to people in the middle of the service. And I thought, that's very odd. This is very weird. And it was very dishonoring to the meeting and the gathering and the point of the whole prayer meeting. And later on, after the service, these people came and called me. Now, I'm passionate. I'm zealous. I'm sold out for God. I'm just trying to do everything I can in the kingdom. I'm trying to learn everything I can. I'm entering into the prophetic. I'm having dreams and color, and I'm seeing things. And So these guys say, hey, will you come onto the streets with us? And I think, oh, God, this is an opportunity. I'm going to learn about evangelism. I'm going to see people saved, and I'm going to pray for people. Good heart, good intention. But there was something off. I'd noticed them come into the room trying to push their agenda. Like, they're trying to get people saved. Isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a holy thing? But something was just slightly sour about what they're doing. But I wasn't wise enough at that point to understand what was happening. And so, of course, I agreed. They were very pushy. But I agreed anyway, and I went on the street with them. And these guys were trying to get people saved. And so that's a good thing, right? Oh, I can tell you, they pushed people, they bullied people, they manipulated people. When people would swear at them, because unsaved people do that, especially if they've had some alcohol, they wouldn't bless them. They would say, the Lord bless you, the Lord bless you. And then they would start praying in tongues to get them out of their presence. And it was just a horrible, horrible experience. Even though the tagline said, we're going to get people saved, the intention was some religious hierarchy where they were trying to push their agenda, and they were actually pushing people away from Jesus. And at the very same time, they were dishonoring the church, who had good hearts and were trying to do the right thing. There's a flavor around that religiosity. There's a smell, there's a stench. And when people operate in witchcraft, we need to be more discerning to see, hey, that's witchcraft. Let me withdraw from that. Let me not touch that. And in a future preach, maybe next week, I'm going to talk about how do you deal with witchcraft. But let me say the headline of how to deal with witchcraft is this: be wise. How do you deal with witchcraft? Be wise. How do you be wise? Hear what God said and do that. Don't let people put you under pressure, push you around. Don't let them manipulate you, even if it's good reason. Even if what they're saying is right on the surface. You got to go with your gut. You got to go with what God says and the peace that He leads you in. And when you operate like that, and you don't come back and forth and think, okay, well, they're manipulating me, but that is a good reason. God, you would like people to get saved. Oh, you would like me to pray for people or prophesy people. When you don't come under that pressure and you don't worry about the flack that you'll get for not going their way, that's called wisdom. And you just stay free from witchcraft. How do you deal with witchcraft? Be wise.